What if I told you your AI assistant is a double agent? While you hunt for deals, it leaks your budget to sellers. This is the Preference Leakage Mystery, and it's changing how we shop forever. Preference leakage is the unintended disclosure of your willingness to pay. Our talk to AI leaves a digital trail. Whether you're a student with a $50 limit or an audio file ready for $500, AI picks up on cues you didn't know you gave. We're cracking the code on why verbal instructions leak more info than hard numbers. We'll analyze the inference slopes sellers use to predict your budget, and show how inference AI turns your personality into a price tag. Paying more because of your words? Stick around to find out how to protect your wallet. Let's get into the mystery.
Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving straight into the incredibly fast-approaching era of agentic commerce. Now, we aren't just talking about using a chatbot to help you draft an email. No, this is a world where AIs actually talk to other AIs to search, compare, and ultimately buy things completely on our behalf. It's a massive fundamental shift in how we interact with the market. But as we start handing over our digital wallets to these language models, a huge, hidden behavioral mystery has popped up, and it completely rewrites how we need to think about consumer privacy. So you really have to ask, is your AI shopping assistant actually oversharing? Think about it. Imagine you delegate a shopping task to your AI. You tell it what you want, maybe give it a little bit of context about your lifestyle, but you absolutely never tell it exactly how much money you have to spend. Yet, somehow, the seller's AI, the agent sitting on the other side of the digital counter, is figuring out your maximum budget anyway. We're exploring this fascinating behavioral mystery today. How are these seller AIs extracting our maximum willingness to pay, even when we never actually gave our own AI a specific number to leak in the first place? Well, researchers call this phenomenon preference leakage. Basically, it's the unintended disclosure of your maximum willingness to pay through the AI dialogue, without any explicit disclosure actually happening. It means the seller's AI is somehow guessing almost exactly how much cash you're willing to part with, literally just by analyzing the chat logs it has with your AI assistant. And think about what this means for a seller, right? If they know your absolute exact limit, they can price discriminate perfectly. They can charge you the absolute maximum you're willing to pay, leaving you with exactly zero savings. To figure out exactly how this happens, researchers at the University of Iowa set up a brilliantly clever experiment. They wanted to contrast two totally different ways we might hand off a shopping task to an AI. On one side, we have the verbal instruction. This is where you just describe a consumer persona. I'm a student or I travel a lot for work, with absolutely no dollar amounts mentioned. On the other side, we have the numeric instruction. This is where you give the AI a rigid dollar budget, say $200, but you slap a strict confidentiality gag order on it. You literally tell it, do not reveal this number to the seller under any circumstances. To see which method actually protects the consumer better, they ran an A/B test using 6 very distinct consumer profiles. As you might guess, these ranged wildly in budget, starting from a graduate student secretly copped at $50 all the way up to a hardcore audiophile willing to drop $500. The buyer AI then had a multi-turn conversation with a seller AI that had a catalog of 5 different headphones ranging from $50 up to $400. After the chat wrapped up, a third inference AI read the transcript to try and guess the buyer's maximum budget. When the AI used the verbal instructions, the results were incredibly revealing. Just listen to how the AI handled the persona during one of the actual shopping transcripts. It perfectly embodied its assigned character. I mean, it literally acted like a broke student stressing out over a $40 upgrade. It's almost funny how well it played the part, asking if the cheaper model is comfortable enough for long study sessions in the library. Remember, the AI was never once told its budget was $50. It was just told to be a tight budget grad student, but it generated highly specific, highly contextualized shopping behavior to match that exact identity. The results of this test were just staggering. When we look at the inference slopes, which is basically just a fancy way of measuring how perfectly the seller could read the buyer's mind, the difference is literally night and day. The AI, given a strict numeric budget and told to hide it, actually did a pretty solid job, scoring a low 0.21 inference slope. The seller's AI could barely guess the budget at all. But the verbal profile AI, it allowed the seller to mind read the exact budget with a perfect 1.00 slope. As the secret target budget scaled from $50 up to $500, the seller AI's guesses scaled perfectly right alongside it. Now, here is the incredible twist to this whole mystery. When the verbal profile AI leaked the budget, it wasn't a bug. It wasn't bypassing some privacy guardrail or failing to follow its instructions. It leaked your budget precisely because it was following your instructions perfectly. You asked it to act like a specific consumer, and it did exactly that, being incredibly helpful in the process. The information that reaches the seller is the exact information the consumer asked the agent to express in the first place. It all comes down to a mechanism called role coherence. This happens when a language model generates behavior, asks questions, and makes evaluative judgments, perfectly consistent with its assigned character description. By playing the role of a specific consumer, the AI naturally develops a behavioral tell. Think of it exactly like playing poker. If your AI starts asking the seller about lossless codecs and planar magnetic drivers, or if it doesn't even blink at a $400 price tag, it instantly signals wealth. If it liberates for 3 turns over a $40 price gap, it signals extreme budget constraints. The persona generates the behavior, and the behavior reveals the wallet. Now, you might be thinking, well, the AI probably just announced, "Hi, I'm an audiophile," and the seller just guessed based on the stereotype, right? To prove this absolutely wasn't the case, the researchers ran an ingenious second test. They took the transcripts and aggressively redacted every single word related to demographics, occupation, possessions, or financial status. They stripped out the identity entirely, but they left in the questions about the features and the reactions to the prices. The seller AI read these heavily redacted, identity-free transcripts, and its guess accuracy barely dropped at all. The slope went from 1.00 down to just 0.93. It could still guess the budget almost perfectly purely by analyzing the behavioral tells in the conversation. The takeaway here is profound. The signal travels through how the buyer shops, not through who the buyer is said to be. This is a massive realization for the future of AI commerce, because the leakage happens through the behavior itself, through the very act of evaluating options and asking questions. Simply telling your AI to keep your identity private cannot close this leakage channel. A privacy directive just asks an AI not to say a specific word, but role coherence is deeply embedded in the entire distribution of how the AI behaves. Since prompt-level fixes, just telling the AI to keep a secret, completely fail in the verbal condition, what do we actually do? The researchers propose that we have to fundamentally change the architecture of how delegation works. We cannot fix this at the chatbot prompt. We have to fix it at the system level. They outline 3 proposed architectural interventions to combat this entirely new kind of privacy flaw: an anonymizing intermediary, profile rotation, and federated aggregation. So what do these fixes actually look like in practice? First, we could use an anonymizing intermediary, basically a middleman AI that takes your highly specific, rich persona and dumbs it down into a generic search query before it ever even reaches the store. Or we could use profile rotation, where your agent slightly alters your presented persona across different shopping sessions, adding a bit of noise so the seller can't build a perfect behavioral profile of you over time. And finally, federated aggregation could obscure the buyer's identity on the back end, denying single sellers the ability to link a specific shopping transcript back to a specific person. These system-level solutions are the only way to protect consumers. But notice the catch here. All of them force us to trade off a little bit of helpful, personalized shopping to maintain our preference privacy. Which brings us to a really fundamental dilemma. As agentic commerce takes over and becomes the absolute default way we interact with the digital marketplace, we're left with a tough choice. To get the best, most personalized help from an AI, it needs to intimately know your circumstances, your lifestyle, and your preferences. But by acting on that knowledge, it inevitably broadcasts your financial reality right back to the market. So, the question you have to ask yourself as we enter this new era is this: if an AI needs to know you to help you, just how much of your financial self are you willing to reveal? Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and I really hope it changes the way you think about your digital assistants.